Hello to you, good friends in Aberystwyth and beyond. I'm grateful to Hannah Bunting for her invitation to take part in this series from St Michael's Church. Like many people, I'm concerned about when the hairdressers are going to open again, as I'm beginning to look a little bit like a mad professor. I've looked into buying some hair clippers to do my own hair. They look as though they're quite easy to use, but the reviews have rather put me off. One of them said, take a course in Chinese before you buy this product. Another one quoted from the instructions which said, the back of the brain should be cut from the neck. Now, today I want to focus your attention for a few minutes on these words written about God, a kind of review. And it says, great is thy faithfulness. The words come from the book of Lamentations in the Old Testament. This is the context of them. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. Now, we're familiar with the whole theme because of that lovely hymn, Great is thy faithfulness, O God, my Father. But maybe we're less familiar with the background to these words and the writing of the book of Lamentations in the first place. That theme, Great is thy faithfulness, sounds as though it's a word of praise that has come from somebody who has been battling with cancer for years and now has been declared disease-free. Or maybe a woman who has struggled to conceive and discovers that she is now expecting. Great is thy faithfulness. Or someone who's been in serious debt and has just won millions on the lottery. Are those the circumstances of this statement? Actually, quite the reverse. Lamentations is a book which pours out grief. It was written just after the year 587 BC. The city of Jerusalem had been besieged for 18 months and now has been destroyed. All hope of deliverance has gone. The very worst that the people in Jerusalem had feared has now happened. During the siege, they experienced hell on earth. One of the worst things that happened was that parents actually ate the bodies of their children. According to the historical records, there was the worst conceivable kind of depravity. The city has been occupied, people have been slaughtered, there's mass rape, enslavement and deportation, and yet the author of this book, maybe Jeremiah himself, says, his compassions, this is God, his compassions never fail. Great is thy faithfulness. We belong to a God where there is hope in the place of utter abandonment. These words are a great faith statement in the very worst of circumstances. They sound like good words to me in the face of the coronavirus lockdown. But what actually do they mean? Who is God faithful to? It's all well and good to celebrate his faithfulness, but about what? Three things. He's faithful to his character. Surely there is nothing that God cannot do. Actually, there are a number of things that he cannot do. And one of them, he cannot lie. Hebrews chapter 6 and verse 18. It is impossible for God to lie. Because he is holy, he cannot lie, he cannot and will not deceive us. He may change his mind from time to time. In fact, he tells us that he has done so. But he never says, I may have said that, but I didn't mean it. Or, when I said that, I was only teasing, don't take me seriously. what God says is backed up by his holy character. He is absolutely and completely trustworthy, reliable, honest, and truthful, because he is holy. Our God is a God of absolute integrity, complete honesty, and we wouldn't want it any other way. This is a God worth belonging to and a God worth worshipping. God is faithful to his character. He is also faithful to his words, to the things that he has said. If faithfulness is an aspect of his character and he never lies, then in that case it is vital for us to know what he did say and also what he did not say. We are living in an age when politicians deliberately misunderstand what other politicians say, and then they use their statements as a stick to beat them with. It's posturing, it's calculated, it's devious. Over the centuries, many people have taken the words of the Bible and they have distorted them in order to justify all kinds of activity. Some of it has been deeply sinful. Even today, some preachers take parts of the Bible and they try to build particular theories of what we can expect God to do for us. There are various ideas that are in currency within the church. One that we hear about from time to time is what is called the prosperity gospel, that God will give health and wealth to those who are obedient to him. Now that is partly true, but not wholly true. It was what God promised to his people in Old Testament times when they were obedient. But even that is not the whole story. It's much more nuanced than that. The Old Testament teaches us that man is born to trouble as sure as sparks fly upwards. Bad things happen to good people, and we shouldn't be surprised when they do. Jesus emphasized the same point in his preaching. He's speaking to his faithful disciples, good men, and he says, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. His apostles similarly took up the same theme, and we hear Paul and Barnabas saying this: we must go through many hardships to enter the kingdom of God. So the prosperity gospel is only one part of what the Bible teaches. And when we have that teaching expanded and more complete, we begin to understand more fully what the Bible is teaching. Not only is the teaching of the Bible distorted within the church, of course it is widely distorted in the world around us. There's a general concept that we can live any way that we want, and there will be no eternal repercussions. I'm sure that you know, and you must have heard it many times yourself, Frank Sinatra's song being sung at a funeral. The song, I Did It My Way. So here is Frank Sinatra standing before the judgment of God, looking God in the eye and saying, God, I did it my way. To which God, without any doubt, would reply to him, Frank, I asked you to do it my way. There are wrong ideas in the church, and there are wrong ideas in contemporary society, and they can only be corrected by an accurate reading of what God has said. When we accurately read what God has said, we will find that God's faithfulness to us is backed up in our experience. This is the experience of Solomon and his father David before him. He's just dedicated the brand new temple in Jerusalem, which actually was destroyed in 587 BC, some centuries later on. But at the consecration of this temple, he turns to the people and he blesses them with these words. He says, "Not one word has failed of all the good promises the Lord gave through his servant Moses." What were those promises? They were promises of protection, of deliverance, of security, promises of territory, a promised land, promises of leaders, prophets and priests, promises of a covenant agreement, his written word, promises now of a temple, his living presence amongst his people. "I will be your God and you will be my people." What God says is backed up by his character. He is faithful. What God says is backed up by our experience. God is faithful. But thirdly, God is faithful to his people. He is faithful to his character, faithful to his words, and faithful to his people. What he says can be relied upon, because his faithfulness does not depend upon our faithfulness. Listen to these words of Paul to Timothy. He says, "If we are faithless, he, God, will remain faithful. He cannot disown himself." Paul is almost suggesting that God is faithful in spite of himself. He can't help himself. Nothing will change regarding his faithfulness because that's his nature. He's also almost suggesting that God might want to let us down because we have let him down, but he can't because of who he is. And that's a fabulous thing. However much we may feel that we have let him down, however shamefully we may have behaved, however far we have strayed, however long we've been away from him, he will remain faithful to us. Take this fabulous image with you into the coronavirus future. It's a vision that John had of heaven. And he says, "I saw heaven standing open, and there before me was a white horse, whose rider is called Faithful and True. Great is thy faithfulness." That's the Jesus that we belong to. God bless you.